Hare Krishna, everyone. Good morning and a very happy Sunday to you. My name is Gopi Gita Schomaker. I'm here at the Children at Home show on the GBC Strategic Planning page with a very special guest, His Grace Vishvambhar Prabhu, also known as David Aguilera, the director of the Bhaktivedanta Academy. Now, Vishvambhar has been a great friend of ours, and I also serve as the Vice Principal of TKG Academy, Regional Representative of the ISKCON Ministry of Education. And today together, we wanted to discuss with you how ISKCON schools and how our Bhakti schools are preparing for and educating during these crazy times of the COVID pandemic. So Vishvambhar, I'd love to get started. Thank you so much for joining. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thanks for having me.
Yes, so I'd love to get started first with a little bit of an introduction. Now, what I know about you is that you started your Krishna consciousness journey when you were about 15 years old. I remember you and your wife, Vrinda, getting married in Laguna Beach Temple, and then hearing that you had moved to Alachua, like the biggest community in ISKCON North America, to start and run the school. Before that, it was the new Raman Reiti school. So can you take us a little bit through your journey that brought you to such a place of responsibility for taking care of Krishna's children in an all-in way as the director of a school?
Sure. I think none of it was by plan, to be honest with you. We moved here from California over 20 years ago when our youngest son was ready for kindergarten. And at that point in California, there really wasn't anything that was a suitable option, at least in our mind, for him. We had our good friends, Bhattacharya Prabhu and Mother Kushrupa, were already living here. They said, come out to Alachua, see what it's about. I was not interested in living here whatsoever. All the credit goes to my wife, Vrindavaneshwari. She had a very clear mind that this is where we needed to be. This is what we needed to do. And I went along with that directive, and where we moved here. When we first came here, it was a transitionary time in education here in the Alachua community. For many, from the very beginning of this community, practically, it's had an educational focus. They've had schools here. What had occurred right about that time, 98, 99, was the devotees had gotten together. They'd been able to get a charter to actually run a government-funded charter school here. And it was a great thing. I mean, it still is a great thing that's been running for quite some time, and it has provided tremendous educational opportunity for so many families in this community. And a great number of devotees have been involved with it and have done exceptional work, which is now known as the Alachua Learning Academy. And so right at that time, there was a big shift where the majority of families all brought their children over to the Alachua Learning Academy. And at that point, Mother Nautika Chandrika, who was a very respected devotee teacher, really wanted to still offer the opportunity for families that wanted a spiritually focused educational option here, something. And so she took it upon herself to reestablish a school here as the new Raman Reiti school. And that was back in 98 and 99 timeframe. And that's the same time we moved here. And so there actually wasn't a kindergarten option for our son at the Alachua Learning Academy. Our intention all along was, well, we'll do 1 year here and then we'll switch over. But he had such a wonderful experience in that first year under Mother Nautika Chandrika, who's just, for those of you that know her, don't know her, she is just a one-of-a-kind personality. Very committed spiritually, very loving. I mean, I to this day, I'm so grateful that my children had the opportunity to learn from her. And so she was single-handedly doing this. It was essentially kind of one-room schoolhouse situation, about 16 students. And she and our son was there, and so we were involved as parents, but because it was kind of like that, her trying to do everything as parents, we felt some responsibility to help out and try to develop the school, and so that's where I got involved. I eventually became a member of the board for New Raman Reiti School, and then through that, really started to feel like the wonderful things that we're doing here should have more resources, more facility to be able to expand, to grow, to be able to serve more kids. And so really became committed to that as a member of our board, and ultimately really came to the point to where, like, if we're really going to take this to the next level, I have to commit myself, and really without much in terms of pre-planning that this was the plan, and this year we're going to do this year that. It's just time. It's just time to get more fully involved. And so I did that, and I've been head of school here, I want to say 14 years at this point.
Wow.
And it's been a wonderful journey for me. I've had the opportunity to work with an exceptional team of devotees that are highly committed to providing a quality, holistic education for our kids. And so we've grown the school out to 100 plus students at this point. We're an accredited IB World School, and at the upper level in terms of our middle school, high school, and then a Montessori school in our pre-K all the way through upper elementary. And together we've just been able to grow and develop the school over the years. We had our 4th graduating class this past year. So we now have a growing group of alumni coming out of what is now Bhaktivedanta Academy. We made that transition back in 2008, and it's been great to be part of it. And as part of that, being able to work with you, Nirti Kishori, Adarya, and Shubra as part of our ISKCON school admins team has been a real bonus for me too.
Yes, it's wonderful. Like it's interesting to hear your journey, that you first were involved as a parent, and that you had such an incredible experience with your child under Nataka Chandrika, that you were just almost called to, like, okay, it's time to get in. I have the qualifications. It's time to get in and do something about this and help support, all of us who are in education. ISKCON, whether you are a Sunday school teacher or you're a Bhakti Vriksha, you're running the child program at your local Bhakti Vriksha program every Friday night, or you're an official ISKCON educator. We all know it's not an easy task to do. It's not very glorified, and it takes a lot working with children, and especially with what you're doing and what we're doing at TKG Academy, having to nourish the spiritual and the academic and the material and the sports and the overall well-being of every single child who walks through your door. It's not an easy task. And so it's interesting, it's wonderful to hear, Vishvambhar Prabhu, your calling, and how you just were like, you didn't necessarily want to. Srila Prabhupada explains that when he got the dream of how his spiritual master told him, come and take sannyas, and Srila Prabhupada was like, I thought it was a horrible thing. I didn't want to do it. And so it's like you were called to do that, to take on his school. Bhaktivedanta Academy means it's Srila Prabhupada's dream that devotees such as yourself, professionals such as yourself, would take on this responsibility, and doing it solidly for 14 years, having grown your school to 100 students. So for all of you who are watching, there's so many of you here with us. Thank you so much for joining. If you are an educator in ISKCON today, we are here with His Grace Vishvambhar Prabhu, who is the director, the head of the School of Bhaktivedanta Academy, which in North America is the largest Hare Krishna Bhakti school that we have. And a few of us who are in administration, principals, and heads of school around North America, we get a lot of guidance from him, a lot of wisdom. I wanted to say that your, Nishikishori and I having to be able to call you, send you emails, hey, do you have this, and what do you do for that? And you openly sharing your policy papers, your resources. You just guided me to a special needs development course that I'm taking. Like, we have been really grateful, Vishvambhar, for your guidance and your mentorship to us, to help us and to get us going in this journey. And hopefully together, maybe it'll take 50 years, maybe it'll take 100 years, more schools, more individuals that are professional, who are professional and have the background, can take your lead and begin opening schools in their communities. And so, we're all...
I just want to say real quick though that it's a two-way street. So I get a lot of inspiration and a lot of support from you guys just the same. So it's not just for me. I'm motivated in that relationship because I get so much out of it from you guys too. So thank you very much for allowing me to be part of that and for us to be able to grow together.
Very nice. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, it's, it takes a team to do anything, and Sangha's association is so important, isn't it? So, we're all like, as it is, completely packed, as it is, days are jam packed. We have to like consciously put, and we've had this discussion before, consciously put like boundaries on ourselves to like take it easy and do some self-care, because running a school is not an easy task. um, and suddenly this pandemic hits, which,
Mhm.
education is at the forefront. The education issues in our country, even right now today in Texas, in Florida, people, schools with many resources, tons of resources, a lot of money, are still struggling to figure it out. How are we going to do this? Teachers feel unsupported. Parents are confused as to which direction they go, and everyone's working on it together. And these are massive, school districts which have quite a bit more resources than both of our schools and that our schools have. How have you, so when COVID hit, what were your thoughts, and what changes did you have to make, and what was, speak to us a little bit about that, and perhaps I can share a little on what TKG Academy did as well.
Sure. I mean, like you said, I mean, running a school, whether from an administrative standpoint or directly teaching in the classroom, is a full time, a more than full time occupation, and the complications that come when you have a major event, in this case, a pandemic, definitely are challenging. And at the same time, I'm grateful that we have a committed team here at Bhaktivedanta Academy that was ready to do whatever was necessary in that instance. So when we first really felt the effects of the pandemic in the spring, that ultimately resulted in us having to close our physical campus and very quickly switch into distance learning. And so we operated that way from through April, May, into the end of the school year, and we finished out the school year online. And so we learned a lot from that. We learned a lot from that experience, and also simultaneously we're getting ready for, okay, fall isn't very far down the line. What do we need to do to be prepared to have students return back to school in very much a situation where we expect the pandemic to be ongoing? And
Mm.
so that's been something we've been working on through the summer, and I could get into the specifics of that if you like. But again, for us, the immediate impact was, yeah, a sudden shift to distance learning, then preparation for fall, and that's what we've experienced here.
Yes, I think that was similar, for quite a few of our schools, in and out of North America, where most of us hopped into an online model and very quickly had to do that. And I love that you mentioned your committed team. We're also finding that our teachers, our staff has been very committed, very ready to just like pull up your sleeves and go for it and do what needs to be done. And without committed members like that, it would be difficult to navigate the scenario. So I love that you brought that out.
Oh,
And
absolutely. I mean, without cooperation, you're not going to get much done.
yeah, and when there is when there's like such a world pandemic, it's weird even saying the word pandemic. We're living through a pandemic, but when there's such a world catastrophe, it's like you need members who are just ready to like put things aside and go forward, and put differences aside and stay focused on the goal and ready to put that time in. And so what were the like right now, the way your school looks, the way compared to how it looked a year ago, say 2019 October, what are the changes in your school?
Yeah, they're significant, and it all started with really looking at what is the reliable guidance that we had from government sources, and then also internally here we developed a team of our own medical advisors that we work very closely with in establishing what are going to be the protocols that we're going to have in place, what are our policies we're going to have in place in order to operate under this pandemic situation. And the one thing though that we really wanted to ensure though is that it's a balance. It's a balance of maintaining normalcy, but not falling into complacency where we're just not doing anything to protect the health and welfare of our students, our teachers, and by extension, our families and communities. And so it really took a lot of time of preparation planning to get to where we are in terms of being comfortable operating as a school, creating an environment that families would be comfortable sending their children to school, and also being able to do things in such a way to where families that for whatever reason, whether there's some specific health concern or there's just general concern, because we really live in an environment right now, there's a lot of uncertainty. And so being able to also create an environment where families that didn't feel comfortable having their children return on campus, so we could still serve them as best as we could. And so it was really a broad approach that we had to take to this. But foundationally, though, we wanted the school to remain the same place that students and families have come to know for many years. Just at our heart, we're the same school, but we just do some things a little different. And so in terms of the way we look at it, we look at an approach that being very straightforward with our families, that this is everything we're doing here is mitigation. It is not prevention. And I think that's just an important point in that in a lot of our discussions is like we cannot guarantee anything. The only thing we can guarantee is that we don't know everything. This pandemic has really challenged everyone from individual level, family level, communities, states, countries, the world, frankly.
And it's so interesting you say that the only thing we can guarantee is we don't know anything. And, even without a pandemic, that holds true, right, for life in this material world. And
Yeah,
I
no,
love what you're saying
true.
here. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to, for all of you Sunday school teachers, because right now Sunday school and weekly education, spiritual education classes have been either on hold, canceled, or on going online, progressing online. And so for those who may be considering opening back up in person, the first thing you mentioned was planning, that you took, a good time period to actually discuss and plan all the details, all the scenarios, and to make it really clear. And I think this helps takes the pressure a little bit off of the educators in charge, the heads, the directors, the teachers, that we're not trying to convince somebody to come and place their child in a school where there will be no COVID. But we are going to do whatever it takes in our power to make sure that we can mitigate the risk of COVID. But we cannot guarantee, like you said, prevention, not mitigation. And so when you identify that as your, baseline to start, then you're a little bit more, your mind is a little bit freer to open up to, okay, let's put in all these policies. But all of that pressure and all of that fear and the fear of the families, I don't have to be the one to accept all of that, because I'm going to do the best that I can. And like you said, this is an ever-changing dynamic. It's what we've been saying in our monthly calls, right? That this is it's always changing. Even the CDC rules, the regulations, what the scientists are finding out about how COVID is spread, transmission rates, so much. And so the second point you made was to assemble a team of medical professionals, which is also something we did. Medical professionals that spoke to our parents, spoke to us, spoke to our board members, that discussed open discussion with our parents as to the policies, why they're in place, how we can become a little bit more comfortable with them in place, because this is here to stay for a while. COVID is here for a while, and also gives us a place to go in case there are questions.
Right. No, and certainly, our medical team was integral in us developing the policies. And in terms of how we implement those and what we do, we laid those out. We shared those with our families because we were at a stage where families had to make a decision. Do they want their children to return on campus? Do they want to see what the online options are and go with that? And so we shared those out, and we had a lot, some back and forth on that. But I can say overall, I mean, our families have been wonderful in terms of their understanding of the complexity of the situation, and their willingness to do the things that are necessary to not only protect their own children, but also everyone else who's connected with their children. And that was a big aspect of this. How do we protect our teachers? How do we make sure our teachers are able to remain healthy? Because they're making a big commitment. they're making a commitment to come into classrooms, to be in those spaces, and to continue to serve students, even in a risky environment. I mean, that's where it really comes down to it. We're operating under a risky environment, but we're doing a lot to try to reduce that risk, to mitigate the potential of that risk. And at the same time, we know ultimately it's up to Krishna. I mean, we're doing everything in our power, and we are powerless. So that's kind of the tack that we take with this. And I'd be happy to share the specifics with you whenever you want to have that part of the discussion.
Yeah, so it's interesting, everything within our power. And this has always been a very interesting dynamic for me, Vishvambhar Prabhu, to figure out in practicing bhakti yoga, how to put your all in, but not be attached to the results, how to go fully enthusiastic and determined, but also to have that patience and that trust that Krishna will carry what I can't, what we can't as a community and as a team. And it's interesting also that you say the risk involved, that we have identified that, yes, it is a risk to go in person. In our community, and I know in other communities, there are people on both sides of the topic or of the wall or whatever the phrase is, where it's like, why are you taking that risk? Why not just go fully online? Or the other side, why worry about the pandemic? It's not that big of a deal. Krishna's in charge. They're feeling a little bit more to the other side. And so identifying and acknowledging that, yes, it is risky, means that you can, again, like in identifying, we're doing mitigation versus prevention, it helps temper expectations. It helps temper expectations. It helps look at, have us look at all the different scenarios, be able to see all the different scenarios. Because in Texas, I don't know what's happening in Florida, but in Texas, schools were remote, at least in DISD in Dallas, and Plano and other SDs, school districts around here. Schools have been remote until just last week. In-person schools only started up very recently. I think in Austin, still most schools are remote. They just opened up the option for students to go in person, and there are cases of COVID that are coming in. And so they're kind of like back and forth. It's almost like a little bit of a pendulum where we're opening and then we're going to close up and then open and close up again. So that risk, how have you mitigated that risk? Like, what are the specifics that someone who's thinking about opening up their schools, whether it be the Sunday school, I've been working with the temple on opening up the temple, and I've learned so much from this process at the school that I've been working with a team who right now we're in our second week, and even little things like we're going to take our shoes off in the line where the students stand at the post, they take their shoes off and then put their shoes on the shelf and walk in, because if they go to the shelf and stay there to take their shoes off, it becomes a bit of a bottleneck. So even little things like that for flow of traffic have helped. So what are the safety measures that you've put in place at your school?
Sure. Well, a lot, a lot of things, and they take different forms. So we look at the environmental changes that we've made, and then we also look at the policy changes that we've made, and then we just look at the day-to-day operational changes that we've made. And so from an environmental standpoint, our first line of defense here is what we're doing in the environment. So we took careful assessment of our classroom spaces, tried to determine, okay, to encourage or allow for enough distancing within a classroom environment. How many square feet does that classroom need to be? And then we determined, okay, what are our max capacities in each classroom based upon those? So that was a simple thing that we did right from the beginning. When we did that analysis, we determined that in some instances, we cannot continue to provide certain services that we used to provide because we can't do it and maintain safe spaces. And so for our pre-K, that involved that our 3-year-olds could only stay with us half day because we couldn't provide nap services for them because it would be too tight together in an environment that really couldn't promote good airflow and all of that. So aftercare services, also we couldn't provide aftercare services as a result because of space, and then also a concept that we've implemented called cohorting. So one of the mitigation strategies that we've established is we've actually isolated our classrooms and they're the students and teachers into discrete units that don't actually interact with other units within the school. And part of a mitigation strategy is that if somebody in one cohort is affected by COVID, it doesn't impact the entire school. And so we're trying to prevent a shutdown of our entire school in a single instance or a classroom instance. And so that also has some effects in terms of the services we provide. It also, as we went to some of our other classrooms, in our case, particularly our middle school, high school, the way that particular environment is set up, we would not be able to have that entire class there together. So we had to actually split the class, the high school group, the middle school group, and then put them on an alternating schedule. So they operate under more of a hybrid approach to where we have students coming 2 to 3 days a week, and then the remainder of the time where they're not in class, they're online, and we operate that way. Again, so that was the first thing in terms of looking at the classroom spaces.
So
Then
is environmental is what you're saying. I just wanted to break down this a little bit for anybody who's watching, and I see quite a few of you have joined us. Thank you so much for being here with us. Pooja Dewan, welcome. Mahendra Baichu from Guyana. Hare Krishna, so glad that you're here with us again today. And I did also want to give a shout out right now to Mother Ragatmika, who has been very encouraging in all of your comments to me, and everybody who has been regularly watching this show. Again, we're here today with His Grace Vishvambhar Prabhu from the Bhaktivedanta Academy, and he's the head of school, or the director of the largest school in North America with 100 students, discussing how are we navigating this pandemic and educating and keeping our children safe during this pandemic. So the first thing you said, the highest level, was environmental policies, where you made sure that the classroom spacing was okay, and if programs needed to be canceled because it wasn't following safety, the safety precautions that we need to be aware of, you were okay to go ahead and cancel those. And then you mentioned cohorting. Is that what you called it? Mm-hmm. Cohorting. And so I'm just going to throw in there, that reminds me of cow herding.
Yeah, I don't know if it's an actual word. It's a cohort, but cohorting.
Hort. Cohort or cohort?
A cohort.
Cohort. Okay. I was thinking of Krishna when he has all the different colors of the cows. He's got the red cows and the yellow cows, and he keeps them separate. And then if the cows do get mixed up, like the story of King Nriga, it's like a big issue, right? When cows get mixed up. Anyways, my mind was going off there while you were speaking. So you keep your students separate, and this is really important. It's such a nice, it's such a good policy, because with 20, you have about 20 students per class. If something goes wrong, say, a COVID infection comes in, which, at this point, the likelihood is, honestly, we will at least have one case in our schools. It's just what is happening in the world right now, that you're mitigating the spread by keeping them kind of sequestered, is the term I've heard. You're mitigating the spread and this community spread, because you're keeping them, safe from each other, less people together. So would you say that so far has been working out okay to keep the students cohorted?
Yes. Yeah. No. It's worked out. It's worked out pretty well. Again, there's always challenges, because again, being smaller schools, resources, particularly personnel resources, are more limited, and so it's hard, because we typically share personnel, because that's how we make everything run. But we've worked around that, and I think we've done a pretty good job. And again, with our team, their level of commitment and cooperation has been exceptional. So that's made that work well. In regard to the environmental aspects.
Yes.
So when we look at environment, one of the biggest things that we looked at was air quality. And when we look at least the what's known right now, or what we think we know around COVID-19, transmission through the air is actually a big area of concern in enclosed spaces. So when we look at how we operate on a day-to-day basis, hey, can we do it outside? If we can do it outside, that's the best thing that we can do. If we can't do it outside, we got to do it inside. But how do we make inside safe, or as safe as possible? And that's where air quality really comes in. And so we made significant investments in upgrading the air quality within our classrooms. We updated our central air conditioning systems with higher quality air filtration. They call it like MERV 13 level filtration. We integrated UV into the air system. Additionally, we also modified the systems to bring more outdoor air in and increase the circulation of air within the internal spaces, just within our central AC systems. And then additionally, we added additional air filtration within the classrooms with very large HEPA air filters that run constantly in the classrooms. And then also just encouraged, when the opportunity is there, open the doors, open the windows, let air in. Unfortunately, we live in an environment here in Florida that, even though it's mid-October, technically it's fall, it still feels like summer here. And it'll be that way probably till about the end of this month. As we get into the end of October, early November, it'll start cooling down. Then we can actually start doing more. But that was a big part of what we did, and received incredible amounts of help from one of our parents who actually runs an AC service company here.
Oh, wow.
And so he donated time. He donated the UV systems for us, and then guided us on terms of a lot of the things that we did. So I actually have to say a special thank you to Govinda Sire, who runs Buckhalter Heating and Air, for that, because he was a major help in terms of helping us get all of that settled in terms of the air quality of our classrooms.
That's great, because that is the primary way that it's transmitted, or so we're hearing right now, right? That it's transmitted through the air. And I love that you mentioned the weather, because outdoor classrooms are incredible if the weather is compliant. And so it's the same thing here in Texas. Luckily, and I'm going to say luckily because we don't know when Indru's going to change his mind, or whoever's in charge of the weather up there. We've had really good weather the past 3 weeks, and outdoor learning has increased. It's just been so beautiful outside. Of course, Texas is very moody. Dallas weather is extremely moody, and we have ups and downs. The kids are coming in with sweaters. In the morning, it's like 50, high 50s, and towards the afternoon, it's in the 90s. That's what's happening today. We're getting 90-degree weather again, so it's a little hard to go out during that time. Yeah. So I love what you said about air quality, and we did the same at TKG Academy. We didn't fix the actual central air system, but we did bring in HEPA high quality air filtration systems into each classroom. So each classroom has it running, and the kids know that that's to keep our air safe, and they love to go and check because it's got like a blue circle and a red circle, a blue for when it's like totally clean, and a red when it's a little murky. And that's been interesting. Also, the windows open when possible. We have more breaks. Just the breaks are spaced in such a way that kids can go out, take their masks off, and come back in. And so you said environmental policies, environmental level, you said a policy level, and under that was the next level. Let's hit level 2. What was your level 2 of these mitigation strategies?
So in terms of health policies, looking at how we can be in the classroom as safe as possible. And so the other aspect that at least we think we know at this point is that physical distance is a factor. Also, face coverings are a factor in terms of helping to mitigate the spread of COVID-19. And so within our classrooms, you had mentioned face masks. So face coverings are required by all teachers, all students, all parents that are dropping off, picking up on campus. And that's just one of our other efforts to try to mitigate the spread of COVID-19. Additionally, we encourage students to remain distant when possible. But as you know, in a teaching environment, these are dynamic environments. We're not going to prevent students from working together. They need to work together.
Yes.
So within our classroom environments, we have plexi dividers strategically placed throughout to provide for the opportunity for students to be able to be together. But there's another layer of protection there in that sense. And then but again, just being conscious of that, and so being careful in that regard, and then from another health policy standpoint, we've always had health policies, but again, I think like we talked about a little bit in terms of our responsibility as schools from a child protection standpoint. So child protection is a big aspect of what it means to run a school. But when we typically think of child protection, we think of physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, those types of things. Being cognizant of those things and setting up policies, procedures within your classrooms, within your schools that are helping to safeguard children as best as possible. And then now with COVID or with a pandemic in our midst, we're looking even more closely at health policies. How are we keeping children safe from just in health, a basic health standpoint? And so as a school, we've always had, if you have a fever or some of these conditions, you shouldn't be at school. That's just a norm. But we've had to accentuate those even more. We've expanded the number of exclusions in terms of symptoms by which it's okay for a child to be at school. And we've also increased the amount of time they have to be symptom-free in order to return to school. So it used to be 24 hours. Now it's 72 hours they have to be symptom-free before they can come back.
And, okay, so just a second here, because there are so many important things that you're hitting on, and there are a few educators here with us. Deepali Baradia, thank you for joining us. If you are an educator today in ISKCON, in Krishna consciousness, or just a Bhakti educator anywhere, or an educator anywhere, this conversation is so helpful to get guidelines of how the schools, the Bhakti schools in ISKCON today are doing this during COVID. And thank you for joining us again. I'm here with Vishvambhar Das, the head of Bhaktivedanta Academy. So I just want to rewind and remind the audience and remind those who are listening, masks are compulsory. Masks are something that is like at the baseline of your policy, that any staff member, any student, any teacher who is coming to participate in the education offered by your school is having to wear masks, and it's the same for our school. And this was a point of worry for parents and even for us, just like, how is that going to work out with little kids? Are they going to be comfortable with the masks? Are they not going to be comfortable? And then I'd love to go back into discussing your health, what you were talking about, safety and child protection and health. But just right here, if I can pause and ask you, how was that transition for your students? And then I can share a little bit of how our transition was. How was that transition for you with students?
Obviously, there was some apprehension about it at the beginning in terms of what that's going to be like. Can children handle that, particularly our youngest children that attend? And at the same time, we've seen over the years that children adapt very, very well. And then even us as adults, the adults that are working here many hours a day, like how are we going to adapt to this? And I have to say that I think the transition has been very smooth. We have students here every day. They're wearing appropriate face coverings. The one thing we did do for our pre-K, because again, there's some concern with being able to manage a cloth face covering, is at the pre-K level, our medical team did determine that a face shield would be also okay. So that's an option at the pre-K level, that students can wear face shields as opposed to face masks, and so sometimes they interchange.
Yeah, and I love what you're saying about adaptability. The first week for us, at least in my specific class, and I'm sure with all the classes, it was stressful. Not stressful, but just you're not used to that covering. The kids want to take it off. So we had frequent breaks, we went outside. Yeah. We had identified a COVID corner that you could go in and take your mask off, but then it was near the library where the books are. And the kids themselves, they were like, oh, but then the books are going to get COVID. They're really young and they have great imaginations. So we decided, no, we're just going to step outside. If you'd like to take a little bit of a break off your masks, to be flexible. It's important for teachers to be flexible with the young ones and even with the older ones in the beginning as they're transitioning. We have a few new students coming in as well at this time that aren't used to wearing masks. Actually, they've been home since like March, and so they haven't needed to be in an environment wearing masks, and I'm aware that in the next few weeks it's going to take some transition time. So Deepali is here with Bhaktivedanta Model School in Pune. Thank you so much for joining us. Please do hit that share button so educators everywhere can hear how Srila Prabhupada schools and the leaders of Srila Prabhupada schools are navigating this pandemic with the most important of our human beings, the children, the future of society, because their impressions, their experiences they get right now, at this age, and even more so during this pandemic, with the educators that are around them who see that their safety is of their primary importance, this will stay with them for the rest of their lives. And so you were saying also now about child protection. and that you realize that child, and you are part of the child protection team there in Alachua, Florida, I understand, and you're also part of the CPO. Is that correct, of ISKCON?
I was. I served on the board of the North American CPO for some years because of all of the requirements, all the responsibilities in regard to COVID mitigation like that. I'm not currently on the board of the North American CPO, but I had the opportunity to serve on that board for some years.
And so that shows that child protection for our children in our society is at pretty much a forefront of your mind at every step. And that's a wonderful thing to hear, especially considering our history. And so I loved what you were saying about how this is just another layer of child protection. We have so many different layers and so many things to be aware of. And you saw this, you saw setting up your school for the students to be safe during this time as just another a part of protecting the children, as just safety. And so you were going into safety here, and you were talking about their health, mainly the policies that you've put into place as far as their health, like, you know, if someone's coughing, if someone has a fever. Generally, students who have a fever are requested to stay home, but now it's even an extra layer. So explain to me a little bit about that extra layer.
Sure. And I did want to also emphasize that, again, those of us that are operating schools, whether it's an established school or a homeschool situation where we invite other kids to come, or we're in a Sunday school situation, I personally feel that our primary responsibility is the safety of kids. Nothing else matters if we can't keep them safe. And so the CPO, particularly the NACPO, has been very proactive in terms of establishing what are those standards, what are those requirements. And I encourage all of you that if you aren't already connected with NACPO, to please get connected, find out what is required to actually have a safe environment for your children to be in. Because if we cannot protect our kids, it really doesn't matter what else we do.
The
So
primary responsibility of our children is to keep them safe. I love that. That needs to be like a tagline on a shirt or something. The primary responsibility of our children, of us as educators or teachers or parents, is to first keep them safe, to make sure that they're safe. And so that's got so many layers to it. Here we're talking about it also in regards to COVID. So go ahead.
right. And so then now we have this other layer of protection that we have to be aware of, or to really work with. And so from a pandemic standpoint, from a COVID standpoint, the way our health policies have expanded, we've increased the number of symptoms that exclude a child from being at school. We've increased the number of hours that a child must be out of school before they can return. They must be symptom free before they return to school. And
Okay.
then we instituted a daily check. So essentially, every child that's coming to school at this point is electronically signed in by their parent, and they're also looking through a list of symptoms and potential exposures to confirm that their child does not have any of the symptoms listed for the last 72 hours and has not had any COVID exposure within the realm of what would be considered a concern additionally. And then so on a daily basis, we know that the children that are coming to school, their parents have told us explicitly that they do not have these symptoms or nor these exposures. And then we're also doing temperature checks as they come to class every day. So every child is temperature checked upon arrival. We confirm their sign in, and then they're in the class. And I have to say that the level of cooperation from our parents has been exceptional in terms of, first of all, getting set up to even be involved in a system like this, because you have to have an app on the phone, you got to register, you got to do all that kind of stuff, and to really be conscious of that, even checking in with us. Hey, here's our situation today. My child woke up, and this is what's going on.
Yes.
Can they come to school, or should we keep them home? And
Yes.
I really appreciate it, because really what we're looking at here is, it's not just our individual responsibility is to protect our children, our families, and our entire communities. And so everything that we can do on an individual basis to help mitigate the spread of COVID is really important. And I just have to say, our families have been wonderful in this, in terms of their level of concern and care, and just wanting to make sure we're doing the right thing. And additionally, for us as a school, having a medical team I'm certainly not a doctor, very far from a doctor, and so we have our policies, but then there's gray areas, and we don't know. So being able to reach out to our medical team, say, hey, here's our specific context here, here's the situation, and then for them to be able to respond back to us and say, yeah, in this case you can do this, or actually this is what we recommend. To have that ongoing guidance has been so important for us.
I love that. I love that you touched on that point of you're very appreciative of the community of parents and how cooperative they've been and accepting they've been. And speaking of parents, I just said parents, and my mother joined from Vrindavan. Hare Krishna, Vrindavaneshwari Mataji. So nice to have you with us. I don't think she's ever been on one of my live videos, so now I'm going to get super nervous. But yes, it's, because appreciative parents, the mood of cooperation in our communities, it really is what makes us stand out in this world today. We're not going to go into the political divisiveness that's happening right now in our country, but bringing, bhakti schools and bhakti in general means to bring people together. Srila Prabhupada wanted to create a house where the whole world can live. And clearly you, as the head of a school with 100 children and a large community, as well as, the other school heads, I know Alachua Learning Center, the director of that school, and then Odarya Leela in North Carolina, Subra Mataji in Houston, us at TKG Academy, Mother Nichikishori and myself, Mother Nichikishori primarily in TKG Academy, this responsibility that we're carrying right now on our shoulders, that Srila Prabhupada is expecting us to somehow or another traverse through, like, the forests, the storms, or whatever the metaphor you want to use during this time of the pandemic, and opening up our schools at this risky time. It's such a big responsibility, and doing it so gracefully and so professionally the way you have been, and that we're being able to all together discuss it, talk about all the issues that may arise. We have a supportive group of heads of schools that can, discuss all of these policies and gray areas and hear from each other, that we're also getting a chance to hear from you today. How you're navigating the school is just priceless. And I love, back to that point, bhakti schools and bhakti communities means working together, means trusting that the directors, and even just knowing that we're going to get through this. And we are looking at all of the different parts of it that are important to look at to keep our children safe, that keeping our children and hence their families and hence the entire community safe is at the top of our priority. And so hearing all of those messages from you are really heartwarming, very nice to hear. So back to all of you who have joined, if you have any questions, we have about 10 minutes to go. And if you do have any questions, right now would be the time to ask. You can also ask later on if you're watching this not at a time when we're live. And we will try to answer those questions if you have a school, or if you're working with a group of children in an ISKCON, in a bhakti setting. Even if you're not and you want to ask questions, we have, Bhaktivedanta Academy, head of school, Vishvambhar Prabhu here with us. And so I'm sure there's a lot more to cover. I know we only hit 2 of the topics as far as your levels were concerned. I know there's a lot more to cover, but considering we have only 10 more minutes, I did want to ask you something that just came to my mind. And maybe if you have something more you want to share about the policies that you've placed, we can do that first. But I did have a question to ask you. So let me know, did you have more that you felt were really important to share as far as changes and policies in your school at this time?
Not so much. I think just really more acknowledging the fact that we're in a situation of a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of fear that goes around us, and just being empathetic to that with our families, with our students, with our teachers. That it just we live in really uncertain times right now, and the pandemic itself has accentuated a lot of things. And so what's really been important to me is that as a school that we're open in our communication, we're transparent with what we know and what we don't know, and to be able to just have those open conversations and create the space for that. Because again, we're doing the best we can with what we think we know right now, and we just know that will potentially, that can and will change over time. And again, just being conscious of that it's hard for everyone.
It's interesting. It's the most important point you're making. And I remember at the beginning of this journey when it was a little more high stress, it's a little bit settled down for all of us because we're in the routine and we're now starting to like focus on the, did I freeze? Can you still hear me?
You're frozen to me.
Okay, I think, let me just double check real quick. It was my camera that went.
There we go.
Okay, I just changed the camera real quick. I switched
Okay.
out the camera. Okay, so what was I saying? Oh, yeah. So in the beginning, like when we were getting started, there was a lot more high stress. And I remember in a few of our group calls that we were having this point about empathy, such an important point, such a time period when there is more stress and more concern, more worry in people's hearts, when the tendency of the heart and the mind is to be reactive because of the fear of the pandemic, to really like take time to remember to be empathetic with each other. That, and we experienced that in our first teachers meeting, where you have a few teachers that are not comfortable with the masks, you have a few teachers that are like, no, you have to have masks, and just each, the discussion of like, oh wow, this is a change, how is this going to look? The first time we got together as a group to get prasadam from a table, we realized that we needed to be separated, we needed to go one by one to get the items, going through the motions, to then see that our children are also going to have to go through those same motions, and taking that time to put yourself in someone else's shoes, even if you may not have the exact same way of looking at the world the way they do. That principle of empathy, of compassion, of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's magnanimity, that was such a powerful experience for us, and it continues to be. So I love you saying that. I love you saying that. And so now at this point, I did want to ask, like, if you, and this is kind of spontaneous here, if you look back at the last month or two, what would you say was like a highlight? If you take yourself out of it for a little while, I know it's all go mode for both of us. In regards to the school, it's just a constant list of things to do and check on, and you have 100 students. We have a third of that. So what would you think of as a highlight of the past 2 months for you?
Well, that's easy. The highlight was having students come back to school. We were joking here that we should have 5-month breaks more often because everyone's so happy to be back. But really, that is the highlight for us, to be able to create an environment that families are trusting, that it's okay to have their children back at school, and to have children here present, and also for our distance learning students, that we have an engagement, we have some connection. And so we're running a simultaneous on-campus and distance learning program, which isn't easy to do, but our teachers have really risen to that. And so then also for our families, that it is really, they have particular situations that prevent their children from being here, that they can still be with us, they can still be part of the school. And so having just really being able to have our children here, whether they're on campus or they're distant, has been the highlight. I mean, our motivation as educators is that engagement with our students, with our children. That's what gives us the juice to do the hard work, to continue every day in what we have to do, to prepare for their education and create the environments that give us the best outcomes. And so that's you gave me an easy question on that.
Oh no, I was giving such an introduction. You might have been like, oh no, what you gonna throw at me? Yeah, okay, I like that. That is so true. When you see those children walking every time, because we go at TKG Academy, we go from the Gora house to the Krishna house. All the students sign in at one point, and that's at the Gora house, which is the upper middle school campus. And so I walk with them. Actually, I don't walk with them this year. We have another teacher walking with them, but at different times, either during lunch or whatever, you see the kids lining up and walking. And yes, you have to remind them distance or keep space. Little ones have to be reminded frequently, just so that, because it's just natural. That's been one of the hardest things, actually, is to always have to remind the students to stay away outside or whatever. But anyways, to see them walking in their line with their backpacks on and, happily bouncing to school, we go to gardening and we come back, that's been definitely a highlight. So I love you saying that, being with the children, being able to engage with the children. And again, you brought in a pretty important point, which we won't have time for. all the teachers who are taking on in-class learning and remote learning, who are working with students, and the parents who are supporting their children, and even the children who are navigating education remotely. It's not easy to do, to comprehend materials through a screen, to have to hear instructions through a screen. It takes like yet another layer of time to get kids to support students in their remote learning. And so we have a few minutes. We could probably touch on that if you'd like to. I just wanted to shout out to Pablo Alberto. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for joining. My kid in Central New Jersey is doing half days, Monday to Thursday, and Thursday to Friday group B, all virtual. It's very interesting. Like, so much of education has been changed where kids are going in half days. And do you have any of that happening? Like,
Well, I mean, in terms of for the majority of our classes, they are here on normal schedule, Monday through Friday. I did mention that our pre-K students, our 3-year-olds, are only here till noon. They don't stay with us full day right now. And then where we've seen the most significant change is in middle school, high school. I think, like I mentioned earlier, so we have more of a hybrid program there, to where
okay.
our high schoolers are here 2 days a week. Our middle schoolers are here 3 days a week on campus, and the remainder of the time they're in virtual classes that are being broadcast here from the school, but they're at home. So we actually have a broadcast classroom specifically for that purpose that was established to facilitate the days where students are not actually here on campus.
Nice. That's really nice. Yeah, being able to serve the needs of families who are looking for both options is such a big service that you're offering and that your teachers are offering. We have a few students who are remote currently as well. Again, in the older classes, the younger classes, it's a little more difficult to do. If the need arose, we would be able to manage it, but we haven't had the need yet. I know other schools are also looking into other. I believe in Houston and in North Carolina, they're also looking into both options. Um, we've got
And I,
5 minutes left. Go
if it's
ahead.
okay, I'll mention real quick that
Yeah.
our approach here and the reason we're doing all this is try to remain on campus for the remainder of the year. And if we can continue to do what we need to do, and our families continue to do their part, we stand a good chance. We stand a chance that COVID will not necessitate a full closure of any sort like we saw in the spring. And
Yes.
that's what we're working towards. And again, like I said earlier on, we're doing everything we can to try to be here, and ultimately no, it's not up to us, because again, for us, our experience in the spring definitely informed a lot of what we're doing now, so that we have the best chance possible of being able to actually have students physically present on campus.
I think that's an important point for everybody worldwide. The more we follow these mitigation practices, the more we, try and keep up with the health policies that are being established to us, like here are the medical professionals who are saying, wear masks, be safe, stay socially distant, try to reduce the spread of COVID, the more we will be able to be in person with these policies in place. Otherwise, the other option is all of us go back home and just stay indoors and stay at home, which most of us are doing anyways, unless necessary. And so that's a wonderful point to end on. Do you have any other last instructions or guidance to offer a teacher in ISKCON who is trying to navigate teaching their students Bhakti scriptures remotely and wondering about opening it up? Any other words of guidance that you can offer?
I would just say look at what's out there already. Feel free to reach out to me or to Gopi Gita or any of us that are actually already doing it. I'm certainly happy to share everything that we've determined. Again, I have to caution that our specific mitigation efforts are for our locale, our particular situation, but much of the general principles apply no matter what the context is. So we're happy to help. It's not easy. It's not an easy thing to figure out and to feel confident in. And so definitely feel free to reach out if I can be of any help or support.
Yes, and go to the KC educators Facebook group. I'll put the link in after the live broadcast has ended. Reach out to me here by commenting, and Vishvambhar will get that comment as well. If you are looking to, have some assistance during these times, we're in it together and we can work with you. My name is Gopi Gita Schomaker. This is the Children at Home show on the GBC Strategic Planning Team page, Facebook page, and YouTube channel. Also, you can go to www.gbcstrategicplanningteam.com for a lot more information, a wealth of resources that ISKCON has provided for a variety of topics. And if you need any help in your educating or parenting journeys, please go to gopigita.com. It's simple, GOPIGITA.com, and contact me and we will be in touch. Thank you so much, Vishvambhar Prabhu, for joining. And I hope to talk to you again. I'm so glad we got a chance to do this.
No, thank you very much, and thank you for providing this opportunity and being a wonderful resource on so many things. It was my pleasure to be here.
All right. Hare Krishna, everyone.